right. I'm going to get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are just about to get started. Thank you for your patience. We'll probably get started in 20, 30 more seconds. Just make sure everything is ready. Very good. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Danny here from Simply Do It, and with another session. We do it, those sessions to educate you. We try to stick to a weekly session on Friday around 10 a.m. We used to do it at 11. Now we shifted to 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is exactly now. This is a pure educational session. We take topics that we receive and experience and talking about with investors throughout our working week, and we bring it into this session. So if you are one of those people who's kind of wondering about something and you're not sure, let us know. You can always drop us a note, and we will possibly talk about this in the next session or so. And we don't typically mention names unless you request that we mention you, and we keep your privacy. So feel free to send us a topic you are interested to hear about, and we may accommodate. If I feel comfortable accommodating and knowledgeable, I'll be happy to do so. Quick note, this session is being recorded on or being distributed on 3 channels: on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live or YouTube channel, and on a podcast. So you can consume this if you want, and other sessions through any of those channels. We definitely see that podcasts are on the increase of usage, and I'm happy to say this seems to be working very well in terms of getting to know you guys better. So if you want to listen to any of previous sessions, we have podcasts, we have on YouTube, and we have here on Facebook. You're most welcome to download, to listen, to watch. I definitely see that a lot of people are joining us post live session. Now let's talk about today's topic. Today's topic is the drama. What kind of drama should you expect when you own a rental property? Okay, so we're talking about drama. Now, when I say drama, I actually mean the noise in the system, the noise that we have as owners when owning a rental or multiple rentals. Here are the things you are typically should expect. Now, I'm not going to talk about the extremes. I'm not going to talk about the tropical storm that comes through the area. I'm not going to talk about nuclear threat. I'm not talking about the China-U.S. commerce relationship, etc. I'm going to talk about what happens usually between the extreme situation. Okay, and typically, we're going to see 4 things. We're going to see evictions, and I'm going to explain about all of them: repairs, vacancies, and communication or miscommunications with the property management company. So let's tackle them one by one for a second so you have a better understanding. The whole purpose of this session is to get your mind calibrated. If you know what to expect, when that comes, you are more prepared for it. Okay, let's talk about number 1, probably one of the more concerning topics investors have: vacancy. Okay, what do I mean by vacancy? What I mean by vacancy, I mean that typically houses do tend to sit vacant for a while. A while can be a week, a while can be a month, it can be even longer, right? Really depends on where you're buying, what you're buying, when you're buying, summer, winter, etc. So the different factors that are affecting the vacancy, your asking price, marketing, etc. But bottom line, expect vacancy. Now, when when do we typically do not see vacancy? Well, some metros in the US do suffer, it's a good suffering, from high demand for housing. Silicon Valley, parts of Seattle, parts of New York City, parts of Washington, D.C., and I'm sure there are other pockets that I'm not familiar with, but those areas will typically see high demand for one reason or another, high demand for housing. And that means a house that is becoming available, many times is being rented or getting occupied very, very quickly with a matter of days or a day or just a few days. Okay, that's not a guarantee. That's what we see, right? So be aware of that. Now, when we exclude the high demand, the super high demand area, let's just call them this way, and we are focusing about the rest of the country, we typically see some vacancies. How much vacancy? Well, the real answer is really depends where you're buying, when you're buying, like I said earlier. In our world of real estate, we try to eliminate the vacancy by going to areas that we know that there are good demand, right? That even when we are eliminating a lot of the possible long vacancy, we are still seeing the following. Anywhere during the summer from 2 weeks to a month and a half, normal, right? We would see it when we purchase the property, and we see it when there is a transition between tenants, okay? The vacancies. That's where we're going to meet them. Have we seen more than a month and a half? Absolutely. Can you get to 2 months? Yes. We probably have 2 to 4 properties or rental, investors that are experiencing probably 2 to 3 months of vacancies. Not every year, every time there's transition, but we see it once, a few of them a year. Not a lot, but definitely see them. Can you get to 4 months? Oh yeah, you can. How many of those do I see in my world of my ecosystem? Well, I see one of those probably once every 3 years or so. So do we get to that frequently? Not at all. Can it happen? Absolutely. Typically, when something like this happens, that means there's other factors that are affecting the vacancy, such as marketing, such as the house readiness, such as maybe an owner is declining, different tenants. So sometimes when I see longer vacancy than 2.5 months, probably something is going on with the environment of the property. Environment can be something objective and something subjective, okay? So can it happen? Absolutely. By the way, should you expect a vacancy every year? Well, again, it depends where you're buying, where you're investing. Typically, or in my world of experience, we probably get tenants tend to stay on average about 2.5 years. So that means we are expecting a month, maybe a month and a half, on average, realistically, every 2 years. Okay, so that makes it about 3 weeks on average per year if we want to strip it down to an average rule of thumb. Again, it's only an average. Your house can be the abnormal one way or the other. By the way, do I see houses being rented in less than 1 week? Oh yeah, absolutely. I have even seen houses that the tenant was ready to move in before the client, the investor of ours, closed on the property. So that definitely can happen. So the important thing to take from this, or the important things you should take from this, number one, is be ready. It will happen. All right, it will happen. Number two, plan for it. How do you plan for it? In your financial model, and we do it on our end when we use our Excel, we allocate a certain vacancy factor, right? If we can be a little bit more aggressive, conservative, realistic, it doesn't matter, but we plan for it. So that means we know that even if our house is going to be rented for $1,500 a month on average, the actual rent after vacancy will probably be like $1,450 or something like that. We put it into the financial model. So be aware of that. So most important thing, be ready financially, be ready mentally. It will happen. I have seen investors freaking out that the house is not being occupied literally 2 days after closing. Well, why are you freaking out? Take a breather. It will rent. I have not met the house that did not rent, and as long as we did whatever we needed to do on my end. Oh my God, Facebook is now waking up, and I see tons of people here. Wow, a minute ago it was completely empty. Now I see tons of people. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me. And I didn't. I thought I'm here with just a few likes. So thank you for joining. Please put likes. Please put comments, questions, etc. Let's make it a little bit more engaging. It'll be more fun for me. Otherwise, I feel like a one-way conversation. Okay, we covered number one, vacancy. Number two, repairs. Guess what? Guarantee you will have repairs. Okay, be ready for it. Who's going to pay for it? No, it's not going to be the property manager. Okay, it's going to be you. It's maybe going to be deduct from the next rent, but it's still going to come out of your pocket. So be aware of that, right? Sometimes people ask me, is the property manager going to take care of it? Yes, not financially. Coordinate, bring the vendor, etc. Absolutely, that's part of their job. Now, talking about the property managers and repairs, here's another, hard, cold truth. Are you ready for this? The property managers are not gonna spend hours finding multiple bids on a plumbing job for $150. Ain't gonna happen unless you want to pay them for their hours. They're not gonna spend hours only to save you $25. Ain't gonna happen. Be ready. Not only that, sometimes, when we have a big job, something in the many hundreds or a few thousand, definitely, you should expect them to bring you 2-3 bids and demand it. That's fine, but not on every little thing. It ain't gonna happen. They have their list of resources of vendors, and they're gonna use it. Some of them have it in-house. Some of them have subs. Doesn't matter. That's what they're gonna use. Let me give you another fact. Many times investors are calling me and saying, well, Danny, look, this is crazy. They're charging me, $150 for some repair that probably should cost about $125, maybe even $100. How come is it so expensive? Well, here's another fact. The property managers are not going to find and not going to hire the cheapest handyman without insurance with a beat up truck to come and fix something in your house. Why they're not going to do that? Because they don't feel that this person can provide any type of guarantee or warranty on their job. And if they bring someone like this to your house and that person doesn't do a good job, they have no one to call on or to go after. And that's something critical, because if that happens to you, then you're going to demand them to take care of it on their expense. So they're not going to check and not going to bring the unprofessional person to your house. They have a certain level of obligation and certain level of integrity they're going to exercise. That's why many times you can probably do the same jobs the property manager is doing for less, but you will probably bring the guy from Craigslist. Nothing wrong with them, right? I'm just saying that doesn't have any experience or little experience or no insurance. You're going to take that risk on yourself. The property manager does not want to take that risk. That's why many times they're going to charge you, or they're going to pay a little bit more. Be ready for it. You can fight it. You can deny it, but that's just a reality, right? You don't have to like it. It's just part of the game we're playing here with long-term rentals. Okay, so be ready for repairs. It's going to happen. Be ready for repairs that may be going to cost a little bit more going through the property manager. Just the part of how things are being done in the US, right? You don't have to like it, but that's just the way it is. Number 3, communication with the property manager. If you're doing it by yourself, everything I'm talking here, or a lot of things I'm going to talking, you self-manage, are less relevant for you. That's fine. If you are working with a property manager, here's what's going to happen. Sooner or later, there's going to be a miscommunication, a friction, a misunderstanding. It's going to happen. Sometimes we are engineers in Silicon Valley or executives or managers or whatever, and we are dealing with people that are not necessarily as sophisticated. good people, reliable people, I hope, right? That varies, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. But we are dealing with what I like to call simple people, and they see, even with all good intentions, there is a misunderstanding, right? That happens when we are dealing with people, and people communicate, and there are misunderstandings, and if you add some different cultural backgrounds and maybe language barriers and and terminology barriers, etc., that obviously is going to happen. We are back live, and I was in the middle of a sentence, and Facebook shut me down. Well, I didn't shut me down, but I just got something happened. So I'm resuming the session here. Not sure what exactly happened. I apologize, but all of a sudden, blink. So if you are on the podcast or you are on YouTube, bear with me for a few seconds, and we are going to wait for Facebook to catch up. I see it's coming up, and we will continue. So my apologies. Technology, those things happen. Honestly, after probably well over 100 sessions, maybe even 150 sessions, that's the first time Facebook kind of click and got us shut down. And I think it's acting out today. So for example, I see likes, but I don't see people. Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna continue where I left off. There was a miscommunication. Maybe Facebook doesn't like what I'm saying here, and I'm being censored. Hopefully not. But when we work with property managers, here's a couple of things that can happen. You said one thing, they heard one thing. They thought you meant one thing, and you actually meant another thing. Those things will happen and result in mistakes that are going to be done by the property manager, and you're going to end up paying for it. Oh my God, you're going to end up paying for it, right? Because sometimes those mistakes, most times, those mistakes are done on things that anyway need to occur. They're just not being communicated or properly. That's a very common practice with property manager. Be ready for that, okay? We teach our investors who buy with us how to better communicate with property manager, and we emphasize where are the classical fail point. And once we know those classical fail point, a lot of the friction, a lot of the problems are being dropped. Actually, so much so, one of the things we offer our investors, and by the way, it's available for sale as well, is a course that we call Owner Crash Course. Owner Crash Course. Owner Crash was something that I've put together years ago, and then we just did a 6 months or so a new version of it. But it simply says, here are the things you need to know now that you are an owner of a rental property. Those things which we've learned over mistakes, over stress, over pain, right? We're sharing them with you so you can learn and you become a much better owner from day one. So there are less, the chances of things like this happening are decreasing, right? That's the whole point of this course, right? Some of the investors who have worked with us and came into our ecosystem of Simply Do It already with some experience told me, Danny, I love this course because I probably knew close to half of the things you talked about, but you know what? There's more than 50% of the things I didn't really thought about, or I thought about, I didn't really realize how important that is. And I'm blown away that you actually list those things and you gave it to me so I can use it for my new properties with you guys and my existing properties, and I will benefit from it as well. So the Owner Crash Course teaches you how to better communicate with the property manager. If you know where the classical fail points are, there's a very good chance you'll be able to prevent them when they get started before they even happening, right? Very, very important thing to have. So we talked about communications with the property managers. Let me give you two examples, two stories. Number one, years back, one of my property managers in Phoenix, she replaced a fridge in one of the investors' houses for I think $675 without the owner's approval. In the contract, it said that the property manager needs to get an approval from the owner for everything above $300 or $400. She did not. She made a mistake. She's a human being. She had all good intentions. The house still needed a fridge, but the investor was pissed. Rightfully so. Okay? Well, she didn't reimburse him. It created a lot of friction, but bottom line, those things will happen. Another story. One of my friends, very good friends, in the past worked with a property manager in Orlando, and the property manager had his system was that anything above I think $300, we go and ask for the owner's approval. My friend was frustrated, so he twisted the property manager's arm to get to the point that they will request his approval for everything over $150. So the property manager has a system for $300, but now one client with 2 or 3 properties at a time wants it to be not $300 but $150, right? The property manager didn't want to do it because that's not the system and processes and checks and balances he has in place, right? But he did. He agreed. Why? Because he wanted to please his client. Why? Because he wanted to please me, Danny, being the simply do it, so there's no friction with us. Why? Because my friend is a very articulate person, and I'm sure he was able to convince him, right? What do you think happened the first time there was a repair and it cost more than $150? The system failed. He didn't call my friend, didn't get an approval, and my friend was furious. And then my friend comes to me and says, well, he agreed to it, right? Why did he agree to it? And this is where my friend had to decide if you want to be smart or he needs to be right about the situation. But I told him, you twisted his arm to get to the point that he's willing to do something to accommodate you, that it's not something he wants to do. So it was designed for a mistake from the get-go. I have an exactly similar situation with another property manager in Dallas. And again, a client owner requested that the amount would be $200 approval instead of $400, right? The property manager in Dallas says, absolutely no. This is a deal killer. Why? Because the minute I don't have a system in place, at least at the time, that I can flag that situation. For me, everything across the board is $300 or $400. And if you can accommodate, I don't have the way in my system to accommodate it. So that means it's a recipe for mistake from day one. I am not willing to do it because I know where we're going to end, right? And the owner said, you know what, that's fine. I'll stick with 400, right? So one property manager was assertive enough to hold his ground because he knew what's going to happen. Another one was just a nice person. He didn't want it to fail. He just was a nice person. He wanted to accommodate his client. So just as an example, how things can go wrong, even if we agree one way or another, but those are the things you should be expecting with your property manager. Now, if you are a person and you understand that, you will know it will happen. First of all, now you know it will happen. Second, work with the property manager on resolving situations, ideally before they even happen, right? Preventive, but be aware of that. It will happen, okay? So a lot of the investors, they freak out, or not a lot, but sometimes someone freaks out about something like this, and you know what? What can I say? It happens. It will happen, okay? Be ready for it. So we talked about 3, vacancy, repairs, communication with property managers. And number 4 is evictions. Okay, evictions. Will you have an eviction? Well, my guess, yes. What are the chances you're going to have an eviction? Well, that really depends. It depends on the type of house, type of area, the type of, the demographics of the area, who are your tenants, and other factors, obviously, right? Now, how can you prevent or not prevent, but decrease the chances um, of evictions? Well, there are a couple of things you can do. Number one, if you target tenants that are living paycheck to paycheck, well, guess what? There's a higher chance that will happen. The eviction will happen because they wouldn't be able to pay the rent. So just as a starting point. Number two, if you're buying in a state that is tenant friendly, right? Versus a state that is landlord friendly, guess what? Many times the tenants know the law is on their end, on their side, and they may take advantage of that. See, I always thought that it's good enough to be in a landlord-friendly state to not only prevent the chances of eviction, but also when it happens, we can go through the process quickly, right? Another very, very important factor. How quickly and how costly will the process of eviction will take or will be? Now, a few years back, after many years of doing this, I realized that part of being in a state that it's landlord-friendly, it creates an atmosphere, a setting for the tenants who know that most likely the law is not on their side, right? Now, that already sets up the environment for them to prevent or avoid a situation like this. So for me, the fact that we are going to states that are landlord friendly and that helps me if I get to the eviction, meaning price wise and time wise, but also it creates a kind of preventive environment, or possibly preventive environment. Okay, so that's also very, very important to know. Now, with that said, I'm now speaking during October of 2019. There are things going on around the country, around the US now, or movements, or I don't even know how to call it, that are changing in some states the laws or the atmosphere, or there is kind of some movement that is going towards from more, from more landlord friendly to tenant friendly. On every, maybe every state is a little bit different, right? We see some states that are already tenant friendly and are becoming tenant friendlier, and we're not necessarily seeing the same attitude in the Republican states or the states that are landlord friendly to begin with. But I cannot say that there is a kind of feel up in the air from reading in the media that maybe there's a shift going on in the country. I don't know. But right now, what's happening to the future, we cannot control. What's going on right now is there's definitely a difference between landlord-friendly states and tenant-friendly states. And the shift we're seeing is especially coming right now in the tenant-friendly states. It's becoming worse, okay, for us owners. I'm not saying worse. And by the way, you guys, don't get me wrong. A tenant, a tenant who lives in my house, they need to pay. Because if they don't pay, I may be late on my mortgage payment and other obligations, right? So it creates kind of, a domino effect. Could be, right? So I am only looking for a tenant to honor their agreement that they signed. I'm not looking for evict anyone. I'm not looking to kick anyone out as long as they hold their end of their agreement or bargain. That's it. On the contrary, I love the tenants. Come, stay, pay, that's fine. That's the whole point here, right? Benefit, enjoy. Some of my tenants, I can see from the photos of the houses that are being sent, they have the tenant, pride of tenantship, right? I have tenants that they work they landscape the house on their own budget. Why? Because they live there. Their family is there. So that's great. I love it, right? So I am not against tenants whatsoever. Don't get me wrong. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you got to pay because that's the deal we have. Very simple. And if you're damaging my house or if you are not holding your end of the bargain, then there are consequences, right? Why? Because if I don't pay the mortgage, there are consequences as well. Very simple. So let's wrap it up. 4 things that we talked about, that I call the drama, the noise in the system, that I hope you understand it's part of it and you will understand that they're going to happen. We talked about vacancies. We talked about repairs, communication or miscommunication with property managers, and we talked about evictions. Now, how you gonna tackle those items and how you gonna address them when they happen, it's entirely up to you. And I want to finish up with a short story. Years back, I'm talking about probably 2005, 6 or 7, around that time. I knew a guy who purchased, worked with us, who purchased, I think 12 properties, all right? 12 properties in different states. And this guy, very, very nice guy, would call us up on every tiny little thing that happened with the property manager. So think about everything I just talked about, those 4 items, everything that would happen with the management, right? He would call up and he would be going nuts, right? 12 houses, there's always something going on communication-wise, repair-wise, and he was like yelling and screaming and obnoxious and rude, and oh my God, he would be completely stressed. So for what? For a broken faucet, for a broken I don't know toilet, something. Come on, he would go nuts on every little thing. And unfortunately, I would hear from him quite often, and every time the tone was really negative and just not unpleasant. And when we would talk not about the problems, very, very, very nice guy, right? Very nice guy. And then one day he disappears, just like that. I don't hear from him anymore. Okay, no complaints here, right? Then maybe 7, 8 years ago or so, I'm giving a talk in San Diego, and he walks in, and he looks at me and says, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Yes, of course I do. Remember him. I don't know why, but I did." And he said, "Well, how are you?" And then we chat a little bit, and then I asked him, and then he says, before I say anything, he says, "Remember how obnoxious and stressed and difficult I was with the rental properties?" I told him, "Yes, absolutely, very much so." He said, "Well, first of all, I want to thank you for always being there and trying to resolve. I really appreciate that. But and I told him, yeah, not only did I remember, I actually wondered, how come you disappeared all of a sudden?" He says, "Well, the reason I disappeared, I didn't disappear. I just got to first of all, I got to the point that I felt that I have enough houses. Second, I just had clicked in my mind that I realized that there's no really a need to get stressed out over every little thing, because that's part of owning rental properties. And I realized the benefit of my portfolio, the greater things it's doing for me. And I was just focused on the problems. I wasn't focused on the bigger scheme of things, how my portfolio is performing, how things are well. I was just very much focused on the problems. And actually that drove me a little bit crazy, and I acted crazy. And you know what? I owe you an apology. I completely changed my mindset and realized that's part of it. So I can fight it, I can get stressed out, or I can say, okay, accept that's part of what's going on, part of this game, so to speak. And when you look at the portfolio that I've built and how it contributed to my life financially, all of a sudden I got perspective, and those issues, I don't like them, but they're very minimal and insignificant relatively to the bigger scheme of things. And what can I tell you? I tried to tell him that many, many times before, but he wasn't open to accepting this, right? I realized it many years ago myself, personally. I had to go through the same mental exercise to get to that point, right? We can focus on all those little things. They will happen, and they will torture you, right? And if you are listening to this and you're thinking like, oh my God, this is what I should be expecting, that is really not good for my health, not good for my personality, you know what? Don't invest. But if you're saying, hang on a second, this is part of it. Every system has noise. Every system has benefits and disadvantages. I wanna be able to invest, and I understand that comes part of it, and I see the bigger picture and the benefits, then you'll probably be okay. But if you are at least know that this is coming, then it'll be a little bit more, probably easier to digest when it comes. So guys, with that said, I want to wrap up today's session. Facebook is acting out on my end. So if you are posting anything on Facebook, I cannot see it. I see likes, I see bubbles, but I don't see anything else. So if you want to communicate now with me, or share with me anything, just do it via email or maybe Facebook message, whatever. But I cannot see. I don't know what's going on with Facebook. We'll take care of it later today. As always, I want to mention a couple of things. That first of all, you are most welcome to talk to us. Just have a what we call a strategy session. It's an intimate session. You and I can talk about what we have to offer, and even if it fits what you're trying to accomplish, right? No string attached, no sales pitch. When I speak to people, I actually, in this conversation, we do it by Skype, Zoom, Facebook, maybe phone, WhatsApp. I don't care, right? As long as we talk face to face. If you're in Southern California, no problem. I'll be happy to communicate with you. Get in touch with me, and we'll set up a meeting. No problem. Again, my promise, I guarantee, it's not going to be a sales pitch. No, it's going to be a conversation. Can we help you? That's it. And usually I try actually to be quiet and talk less during those conversations, and let you be the one who leads the conversation. On the top of that, I want to say that like I said earlier, this is being recorded with a hiccup today on YouTube, so you can consume it on YouTube. This is being recorded on our podcast. We have a podcast in English. We have a podcast in Hebrew. Obviously, this is not going to be going on the podcast in Hebrew. You are most welcome to sign up to either one of them. Not a problem. I will post the links in a minute right here below, so you can subscribe. And that's it. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Happy holiday if you are celebrating any one of those holidays. And I hope to talk to you soon or see you next week. Bye bye, everyone.